Sometimes on my channel, I have to talk about certain things that I really don't want to. And today is one of those days because I'm talking about an author whose book I really believe is one of the best Christian books written in the last couple hundred years. I mean it. Like Gentle and Lowly. That book is a game changer. And I really do believe that if everything stays above board, that's the way I'll put it. If it stays above board, I really do believe that book is going to have an impact on Christians for generations. That being said, the author of Gentle and Lowly, Dane Ortlund, has gotten into a little bit of trouble. And I talked about him a couple weeks ago because there was a tweet that I thought wasn't very loving and very much not in line with the whole idea of Gentle and Lowly. But now there's a story that's come out, and it looks like he may have done some things within his church that I don't believe are biblical, and I don't think that any Christian church should treat people who are on staff there in this way. And again, I don't like saying that. Like sometimes, I talk about people and it's like, they kind of get what they deserve, like, some of those guys are just like, yeah, it's kind of fun a little bit to talk about, some of the things that they're discussing and different things that they're putting out. This one isn't that. So let's go over here and let's look at Christianity Today. And you can see here from the title, State finds substantial evidence of retaliation at Illinois church. A firing at Dane Ortlund's Naperville Presbyterian Church spurred a rare legal determination that could be a useful case study for churches. You don't want to be that. You don't want to be the useful case for other churches when it comes to the legal angle of things. But I mean, that title, substantial evidence. I want to be clear about a few things before we even move on, because I've seen some people be like, "Oh, I really pray it isn't true." I really pray it isn't true. This is the state having already done an investigation, and this is what they found. This is fact. This is what happened. This isn't ooh, somebody in the church is talking about, whether this person should have been fired or not. This is not that. This is a state-run agency coming in, doing an investigation, and these are their findings, okay? So for any of you guys who are like, oh, I just really hope it isn't true, I'm sorry, but it is. Now, what you do with it, that's up to you. But let's just read a little bit. 2021 firing of a female staff member from a Chicago area church led by pastor and author Dane Ortlund was determined. Also, Ray Ortlund, I'm sorry I'm talking about your son. I still someday I want to have you on my show. This is gonna kill that dream. Was determined to have substantial evidence of retaliation, according to an investigation into alleged discrimination by the state of Illinois. All right, state agency. The former director of operations at Naperville Presbyterian Church, Emily Hyland, said her termination came days after privately complaining to two elders about gender discrimination from Ortlund. At the time, she had worked at the church for 8 years, and he had been senior pastor for 6 months. After her firing, she filed charges over gender discrimination and retaliation at the state agency. The Illinois Department of Human Rights did not find evidence. So this is important. This is something that they didn't find. But they did not find evidence that the church or Ortlund discriminated against her based on her gender. So that's a good thing on the side of Dane Ortlund. It's very low bar, okay? But it's a good thing that they weren't able to find any gender-related discrimination when it came to Ortlund. Evidence shows that Ortlund never made any discriminatory remarks directly related to Highland sex. The report said, nor was there evidence of discrimination that rose to the level of a hostile work environment. Also important. But the agency found substantial evidence, and this is why it's in the title, but the agency found substantial evidence that she was fired in retaliation for having engaged in prior protected activity. In other words, because of this conversation that she had with Dane Ortlund, and I think it was Dane Ortlund and another elder, that she felt like she was having things. If you go through the article, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but if you go through the article, you'll see that she believed that in her job, there were things that were getting taken away from her, and given to other people because she was a female. Now, obviously, from the report, there's no credible evidence to say that that is the case, but there also isn't evidence to the contrary. Okay, so I want to be really fair about how I deal with this thing, but that's what she was claiming to these two elders, and then she was immediately fired, and the state found that it was in retaliation for that. So these are facts. What do we do with the facts? That's the hard thing. Now, I also want to point out just one little thing that I saw over on Julie Roy's reporting of this stuff. She says that Hyland wrote that she was offered severance on condition that she sign a non-disparagement agreement, an NDA, and she added that she refused to sign it. Messed up on the view over there. What do we do about churches and how they handle staff members? Because it's a hard line to walk, because we have, or I should say a fine line to walk, because we have scripture that talks about how we deal with elders, right? And we've talked a lot about that here on my channel. Like, how you deal with elders really matters. And there are biblical things that we can do in holding people accountable. But what about someone who's at the workplace and it just isn't getting their job done? Now, I'm not saying that that's what Hyland was doing, because there are elders, like one of the former elders who was like their longest standing elder actually ended up leaving because of how the church dealt with this, specifically how Dane Ortlund dealt with this situation. And he said that he never saw anything that was like subpar from Hyland. But how do we deal with that? Well, I think that there are biblical principles that we can take into consideration, primarily ethics, like that we are to love people, that we are to be kind to people, that we are supposed to treat people the way that we want to be treated. And I know that's like super simple, right? Like that's like Sesame Street kind of Christianity, like that we should all get this. These are the ABCs. And yet we see church after church after church deal with their employees, their staff members. So again, not talking about elders, but people who are on the AV team. There's a lot of different stuff, especially nowadays, about how you have cameras and microphones and how your streaming services and all of that kind of stuff. You have all different kinds of people, depending on the size of the church, that are getting paid. And those would be staff members. How do you deal with staff members? Well, I think that you just use the ABCs of Christianity. I don't think it's actually that complicated, but yet we see church after church after church mishandle these things, botch these things, and I think it's pretty clear. Whether you love Gentle and Lowly or not, there are people who love that book. I'm one of them. There are people that hate that book. You might be one of them. But whether you love it or not, and whether you love Dane Ortlund or not, I think it's pretty clear from this article. Like, this got botched. This woman was wrongfully terminated. And I think that's evidence in how they wanted her to sign an NDA. Like, let's be clear. No church should force any staff member, any elder, to sign a non-disparagement agreement. What are you doing when you do that? You're hiding the truth. You're just wanting people to not be able to know the facts of what happened. You're trying to hide something. That isn't transparency. That's not honesty. Now, does that mean that everything has to come out into the open? No. Some of you guys accused me of that when I was talking about the Matt Chandler stuff. It's not that everything has to come out in the open for everybody, but things should be able to be talked about within that church of what actually happened. And I think that here it's pretty clear that something terrible happened, in that someone acted out of, I don't know, maybe anger, maybe jealousy, maybe just a defensive thing of someone being new and 6 months in and getting accused of things and acting out, and at least according to this, substantial evidence of retaliation. Pastors don't do this. People who are in charge of churches don't do this. Treat people with respect. Treat people like Christians. Love people. Be gentle and lowly toward these people. And don't make them sign NDAs just so they can get their severance. It's ridiculous. Like, let's treat people properly. That's what we should take home from this. And also, the reason why I wanted to talk about this, you might be like, all right, you just like needed some content. No, it's because it keeps on happening. Like, it keeps on going on. Like, listen to the rise and fall of Mars Hill, not to equate Dane Ortlund with Mark Driscoll. But if you listen to that, you can hear tons and tons of staff members who went through the ringer and were hurt by their church, and like things that were said to them that shouldn't be said in even a secular workplace. Like, come on, church, we're better than that, right? Like, we shouldn't have to go to like state agencies to have them look into how someone is fired. And maybe, just maybe, there should be some congregationalism. I'm a Baptist, so I believe in congregationalism. Now, not all Baptists do, but most do, at least in there's some form of congregationalism. What that means is that the church is involved in the decisions of the church. I think this is where, like some of my Presbyterian friends get it wrong. That everything is behind a closed door amongst elders. And like, yes, things get sent to the congregation and the congregation trusts the elders. And so there's this give and take kind of relationship as far as the information goes. And in an ideal world, that the congregation should get that information. But it doesn't always happen this way. And this is kind of the result of something like that. Congregationalism has some benefits when it comes to transparency, because things have to get to the church for votes, even something as simple as firing a staff member. That's just some of my thoughts. I'm going to have this redirect. If you're watching it live, this is going to redirect into an AMA kind of just hangout session where we could talk about this. We could talk about a few other things. If you are watching on the replay, YouTube is going to tell you that there's a video over here that they think that you might want to watch. And hey, maybe you do. Anyways, I'll see you either in that video or maybe over in the afterlife. I'll see you there.